Hey, well, hello, welcome to my YouTube channel where I actually don't usually post a whole lot of videos. If I do, they usually have to do with one of my two podcasts, and I'm doing something a little different today. I'm kind of off the beaten path, I guess. And first of all, I want to say that I'm talking about a subject that is sensitive, but also incredibly important right now in our current day and age. And what I'm going to share kind of feels like it goes against pretty much all the popular opinions of most Christians right now. And I kind of fought with God on this a little bit because I just didn't really want to add any fuel to the fire or create any conflict or be seen as a troublemaker, and let alone be seen as someone who is kind of flippant or cold or callous about the horrific issue of human trafficking, especially of children. This is a key issue in our world today. It's a heinous crime. It's a terrible sin. It's an atrocity. And that's where I stand on human trafficking. But I wouldn't want anybody to think that I have a different stance based on just a different perspective I'm going to share about, you guessed it, the ultra popular film that's out right now, Sound of Freedom, with Jim Caviezel, kind of the Tim Ballard story. So, I personally have been part of fundraisers and organizations supporting the fight against this horrible, horrific, evil plague. I have done speaker events, and I've donated my fees to organizations that are deep in the trenches fighting human trafficking. I've joined with other people so that we could kind of, do matching things and have more money coming in. So I put my money where my mouth is when it comes to human trafficking, and I will continue to do so. So I really want to get that out there right from the get-go. But I have a continuing and even a growing sense that something about the Sound of Freedom film is not quite right. It's not quite right. Something is off. Anybody want to raise their hand and say, yeah, I've kind of felt that way too. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And I kind of think maybe there's like an elephant in the room that probably should be addressed. So that is what this YouTube video is all about. It's kind of my thoughts on the Sound of Freedom film from a different perspective than maybe what is most popular among Christian voices right now. I want to say that anyone, listen carefully, anyone who has been a victim of abuse, in particular the kind of evil abuse that this film is about, you are not a bad Christian if this simply is a movie you can't go and watch. You can't sit through it. You can't do it. If you've been a victim of abuse, you're not a bad Christian if you just can't make it through this kind of a film, if you just can't do it. It is simply too much for some people, maybe more than some people, maybe a lot of people. It's just too much. It's too real. It hits too close to home. And, in the middle of all the pushing and declaring and speaking out that, golly, there's just so many people saying they're pushing it. Every Christian needs to see this. You need to see it more than once here. And there kind of begins to be this frequency kind of running right under the surface level of, you're not as good a Christian if you don't really get on board with this right now. The whole, you need to see it again and again, more than once, and I want to give you permission to not see this film if it's going to wreck on you. And for some people, it is going to wreck on you. If you have lived through something so horrific, you don't need a movie to reveal how horrific and how evil things can actually get. You just don't need that. You've lived it. It's kind of like this. If you survived the Holocaust, who in the world would have had the right to use like insistence and peer pressure and even a bit of like godly shaming, for lack of a better phrase, to try and get you to go watch a movie or read this book that's super in-depth about the Holocaust? Say you survived Treblinka, and somebody says to you, yeah, okay, sure, you made it through Treblinka. Yeah, I get it. But you really need to watch this very intense and very realistic movie about Auschwitz, because otherwise you're just not really standing in support and solidarity with the victims, the people who've gone through so much. If you don't watch this, then you're negating your experience and theirs. Would that make sense to you? Would it actually really make sense? Because it doesn't seem like that would make sense. I don't think we really would be doing that. That kind of behavior would trouble us. We'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? Why are you saying that? But that's kind of what's going on right now in the Christian world with the Sound of Freedom movie. I'm just saying that's kind of what's going on. So many people have lost their chill, their ability to be compassionate toward others who have suffered so much. Because in the haste to just push this movie onto everyone, the compassion has gone. The sensitivity chip has been removed from so many people's brains. Look, we can't push this on everybody because it is not for everyone. I'm just saying the truth. I'm just saying out loud what some other people are thinking in their head and maybe just not quite wanting to face maybe the wrath that might be coming for saying that out loud. Remember during a very recent season in modern history when Christians did not want a certain specific something pushed upon them by others who didn't think the same way that they did? You remember that? Think about it for a second. You'll know what I'm talking about. Now it seems like the everything has shifted, and Christians are the ones doing the pushing and doing it with a film that can be horribly damaging to someone who has been abused. I cannot say this any more clearly. This push is too much for some people who have been through living hell. Please be gentler with your words and consider others and the possibility of their life experiences when you're sharing about this, when you're posting about this movie. Seriously, please, this could be very traumatic and stressful and just bring back a flood of memories and stress for somebody who's just scrolling their feed on social media. I get that that's where you feel like you need to share it, but the sensitivity is missing. It's missing. This is a movie that cannot possibly be safe for everyone to view. And so it should not continue to be pushed as a movie that everyone has to view. Not everyone should see this. Can we just stop all saying everybody's got to see this? Okay, now I'm going to get into something that is probably, it's going to be a lot more touchy and controversial. I'm stepping on toes. I'm probably going to be just mashing people's toes. So if you think that might be you regarding this particular movie, you can just stop watching right now if you really think it's just going to upset you because, that's really not my aim. I just want to share from personal experience, something that is a perspective that some people have, not a lot of people have, and I think it needs to be shared just to kind of, it's, for informational purposes or whatever you want to do. Discernment, this is important. There are some people who follow Jesus. Now, they are disciples of Jesus. They know him as their Lord and Savior. He is their Messiah. They were saved out of false religions or even cults in some cases, okay? Jesus is awfully good at reaching down into that darkness that is a cult, and it is darkness. A very demanding religious system. He's really good at reaching down into that darkness, and there is darkness when you're just involved in a religious system or maybe born into a family that adheres to this religion. It's darkness. He's so good at reaching down right into there and plucking out people and revealing himself to them and then giving them life abundantly for this life and then eternal life for the next life. He's really good at that. He's excellent at that. My husband is a recipient of that exact thing. For those people, even a hint of what was their religious chains and bondage, like cult bondages, even a hint of what they came out of, it can make their hair stand on end. They're super aware of it. They're heightened, alerted to it. And they should be, because they were rescued out of it and they know the great cost that it came with. If that's you, you get what I'm saying. If that's somebody in your family line, maybe a sibling or a spouse, you get where I'm coming from. Your radar runs a bit differently, you might say. And you see things that are whoa, hey, wait a sec. There's something about this whole thing, that's that religion I came out of. That's not really knowing Jesus. They're slapping some Jesus on it, but that's not the real Jesus. That's bondage. That's a false religion. That's a cult. That's a system that is entrapping and guilting and shaming, right? So for those of you who don't have that same experience, it can probably seem like these people are a bit much. It's not that they're a bit much. It's just that what they came out of, like if you are the child of a raging alcoholic, you probably have some like heightened sensitivity to certain things. Okay, I could give you examples. I'm not going to because for personal people's privacy, but I'm telling you, if you've been in the weeds in something and Jesus rescued you, you can spot it from a mile away. So you can be like, what's the big deal to people who haven't experienced it? Well, the big deal is that Jesus had to do some miraculous and also painful stuff most of the time, most always, to get you fully out of that religion or that cult. And then to get that religion or cult out of you. So he rescues you out of it. And then if you were born into it and raised in it, there's a lot of work the Lord has to do, purging and refining fire to get all of that religion out of you. It's like spiritual surgery. It's painful and it's costly. And people that you love, family members, they may still be trapped in the lies and the bondage of what you came out of. And you fully following Jesus, taking up your cross daily and following him, came at a cost. It didn't come easy. Often you have relationships that are severed, never to be the same again. You may have lost things that most of us just can't fathom in westernized culture, losing to follow Jesus. This decision to follow Jesus when he called you, no turning back, that's literally your lifestyle on the daily. It's not just a song lyric. I mean, it's your life daily. I've decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. Recently, I saw a post on social media that said, don't go back to anything you had to pray your way out of. And that applies to praying your way all the way out of false religions, because it's a long process for all of it to just, you got to reset your mind. Your thinking has to be changed. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of prayer work, and it is like spiritual surgery, yielding to the Holy Spirit to do the hard stuff and then following him every day, no turning back. So now I've laid the groundwork. You know where I'm coming from. So what I'm about to say next, it may challenge some people. It may rock the boat a little bit, but I don't think that I just can't not say this. There is a link between the Sound of Freedom movie and the Catholic Church. There is a link there, okay? Jim Caviezel, there's a link there. As a Protestant, the Catholic Church is not our religion, our religious system. It's a false religion if you are really a Protestant. Just going to say it. Jesus is no longer on that cross. He is not being crucified again and again and again. He is risen. He is risen indeed. When you take communion, it is not Jesus being crucified again and again. There is no Mary holding back a furious Jesus from just wiping us all out. Look, the Reformation matters, and we're kind of getting too far away from the words that describe us. The term Protestant, we don't use it nearly enough anymore. The Reformation, do enough of us even know what it is? It's only been 500 years, and yet we're kind of like not clued in to what it costs for us to have real freedom in Christ and access to open your Bible and read it for yourself. There could be a whole lot of people growing up in churches all across the United States where I live that don't even know what that means, that word Protestant. Isn't that where we're at right now? That's the times we're living in. Protestants are not Catholics and vice versa. We have muddied the waters that used to be crystal clear, and it came at a high cost, that clarity. The freedom we have came at a high cost, right? I mean, if you don't know much about the Reformation, dig into it. You might be surprised at what it took for there to be like these lines of demarcation. They've just been like totally roughed up, like the ocean has washed over a line you drew in the sand. That's what they've become. It's not there anymore. Anyone who will kiss the ring of the Pope is pretty immersed in a religion against which we, as Jesus' disciples, are among those who consider ourselves protesters. We protest. We're Protestants. Second, number 2, Tim Ballard, he has links to Mormonism, which is very much a false religion. It is the religion that my husband was miraculously saved out of. He was born and raised in it and was saved out of it when when Jesus just made himself known to my husband. It's filled with teachings of a false Jesus. It is not the same Jesus that you and I know if you know Christ, okay? It just is. It's not, and I'm not talking about like old-fashioned Mormonism, whatever in the world that is, where people right now might be like, oh, but Mormons today are different. They are not following the Jesus of the Bible that you know. They do not believe that Jesus is God. I don't need to go into all of this stuff. You can rabbit trail that on your own. But I'm telling you, my husband being saved miraculously out of Mormonism after being raised in a Mormon family, I have seen some things. He got saved after we were married. I got saved first when we were married, and he got saved about a year and a half later. So this isn't a video seminar on Mormonism, on the LDS religion, but there's a link here. Tim Ballard has links to Mormonism. Tim Ballard has links to Freemasonry. You might think that's not a big deal at all, but I'm going to tell you what, it most certainly is. People tell you who they are. You need to believe them. Freemasonry is not something that fits with being a disciple of Jesus. Do a quick Google search, see some evidence that Tim Ballard is involved in Freemasonry. It'll take you about, probably under a minute, and you'll go, oh, yeah, that's actually true. And there's a weird mugshot of a Tim Ballard who looks just like him. Some kind of a sexual indiscretion in Arkansas. There is some people who have voiced concerns about where the money goes for his Operation Underground organization. There's some money issues, things that could be called scandals. Look, you can take all of that and set it aside and debunk it if you want to, but still, the Mormon issue and the Catholic issue are real, and it brings up real red flags. Like, how many red flags does it take before people start to go, something's weird here? It's just not good to have that many red flags. It doesn't fit with kingdom work that is done for the King of Kings, Jesus. So look into Tim Ballard and Jim Caviezel if you like. The whole call to action at the end of the movie, what about that? What's going on with this chip, my chip concept for our children that is linked to the Masonic lodges, Masonry, Freemasonry? Anybody else feel like this is not quite right? Something not okay with introducing the verbiage of the chip, because you're not being chipped through this process, but the verbiage of chipping your children and entrusting their private and personal information to somebody else for their safety. Some of us as Christians have pushed hard against this exact thing and yet are turned around saying, yep, I'm all for that because this is different. Maybe just pray about that. A little bit or a lot. Pray about it. It doesn't seem like normal phrasing when they're not actually putting a chip in your children. I know the acronym, I get it, but also hear what I'm saying here. What's really going on from an organization that maybe is not the one you want to trust your children to. Getting the next generation used to being chipped, maybe? I don't know. Giving parents a sense of false security by handing more and more power over to somebody else to look after our children? I don't know. We've got links between both these men to the Knights Templar and Freemasonry. We've got that mugshot of Tim Ballard. That is really bizarre. I think if you feel so inclined to look any of this stuff up, feel free to do it. I think you probably should if you really want to be clued into what I'm talking about fully. You've got Jim Caviezel wearing a Jerusalem cross of the Knights Templar. And you have a film, important question here, you have a film that Hollywood allowed to come out, even though the main actor is saying he's going to expose people, many of whom are in Hollywood, the sickos, for how they're involved in this. A movie against Hollywood being released by Hollywood. There's just a little bit of a... It's the red flags. I keep coming back to the red flags. You've got a Mormon and a Catholic working together. And by the way, just another aside here, the Catholic Church, they have a certain law firm on retainer to help them deal with their issues. And I think you probably know what issues I mean. These are issues that involve children, okay? And can you guess? Can you possibly guess? Man, I just bet you can't guess what other church has the same exact law firm on retainer, and this law firm only deals with one certain thing and really only has two clients, these two churches. They deal with in this other church. Bet you can't guess what that is. It might be, do you think Mormonism? Same law firm on retainer to deal with accusations of a similar kind of abuse. Don't forget, my husband grew up in that religion, okay? So this isn't just like, she just got this off TikTok. No, I did not. No, he did not. This is like real world life experience here. So you've got the call to action at the end of the film for the Masonic Child Identification Program by Chip. Okay, yeah. So it's another these are red flags. Just think about this. In addition to, please, seriously considering people who have been through horrible things, seeing so much about this and it kind of being pushed on them that it's shaming. Like, you're a bad Christian if you don't get on board with this. Or, some people saying, well, I met them, I shook their hands, they're good people. You don't know anybody by shaking their hand. You really don't. That's not, come on. I mean, come on. We know better, so we should do better. Like, we should behave better. We shouldn't say that kind of stuff because we know better. Okay, I'm going to end the video the way I began. If you have come out of some sort of abuse or trafficking, it is okay to acknowledge the trauma that you've experienced and to acknowledge that this film could be triggering and just really, just traumatic all over again. That's simply the truth of the matter. And if you happen to disapprove of Freemasonry or you've been saved out of Mormonism or Catholicism, this may not be a film you want to support. That's also simply the truth of the matter. If some of us simply don't support certain brands or stores, we won't make purchases there anymore. We're not going to drink this particular beverage. I think you know what I'm talking about, because of where they put their money and what they support. I don't need to say it out loud because you know what I mean. Doesn't it also make sense that many people do not want to support this film for the same kinds of reasons? Because there is something they know about the particular religious organization they were saved out of and they just don't want to put their money there. The difference is that those within our Christian faith right now are so ready to guilt us and shame us and really seem to be willing to shoot our own wounded within the church and people who've suffered abuse and have come out of really difficult religious, traumatic, cultish experiences. They are wounded. Jesus is their healer. We're willing to shoot our own wounded rather than look at things from a perspective of, oh, I haven't experienced that, but you, my saved brother or sister, you have. And so I'm going to look at you and see you and offer some kindness and sensitivity and listen to the other side of the story. As a Protestant, I would rather, if you would rather not continue to place on a pedestal a mere man, just another human, who kisses the ring of the Pope in a religious system that you protest as a Protestant, and it is a religious system that absolutely reeks of abuse, which is, interestingly enough, pretty similar to what's being addressed in this film. If you'd rather not put a man involved in that religious system on a pedestal, well, you just might be the one I made this video for. Test the spirits, it says in 1 John chapter 4. And really, that's all I'm encouraging you to do, for Christians to test the spirits, to be wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. And Jesus said that in Matthew 10, verse 6. And that is how I would like you to handle this. I guess it's a hot topic because it's a hot movie right now. By just being wise as a serpent about it. And just really pray about it. Seek the Lord's will on it. If you feel like you need to look up some of these things for yourself, then do so. The pressure to see this film, to accept it, to endorse it, to share about it, to buy more and more movie tickets for it, that's one last thing that I'm going to tell you is a huge danger of this thing. It's making child sex trafficking a household word, and maybe not in a good way. There are going to be people who go to this movie who never thought of such a thing. As the Lord says in His Word, when He's talking about Himself, about children and abuse and child sacrifice, of such a thing I could never conceive. I've never even thought of it. That's how we're supposed to be with the mind of Christ. And yet, you're going to have people who are going to go to a dark place because they saw this movie and something evil is going to come out of it. You know what I'm saying, right? We shouldn't ever get our children used to being the word you're going to be chipped now. We shouldn't get our children used to hearing about things that are, this is not a household word. We should not be dulled to child sex trafficking. We might even think we've really done our part. Man, we've helped the cause because we bought a movie ticket. We went to a movie about it. Think about that and see if it passes the logic test. What did you actually do in the fight against this by going to a movie? Are we really changing anything? Where's the money from the film going? Are we just rushing to sell out theaters and get our kids enrolled in My Chip? Think about that. The men who are paying for these evil acts, the men who are paying money to do these heinous things, they need to be dealt with. And there's a God of justice who will. There's a root cause, my friend, and it is sin and the blackness of the heart, that all mankind needs the forgiveness and the grace of Jesus. I'm not saying there's some without sin. There was one, his name was Jesus, the God-man. But I'm going to tell you what, the blackness of mankind is what started this whole evil industry. And the answer to that is not going to be found in the religious systems that have a track record of abusing young people. Check tape. They've got the receipts. We all know about it. So why set all that aside, check our brains at the door, and our discernment, throw it out the window, and just go buy a movie ticket? I know this is controversial, and I know to some people this is going to be offensive, but maybe, just maybe, perhaps it needs to be a little bit offensive. Maybe it cannot possibly be anything but controversial and offensive just because of the nature of the subject matter. If we're going to present another side of a very, very difficult, rotten plague that is just an evil in our world, if we're going to present the other side of it, it's probably going to have to be with some controversy and some offense. The pressure and the guilt tactics to see this film have really been, they've been intense. I think intense is a fair word. And if your life experience is being ignored, what you've been through, if that's being ignored, overlooked, brushed to the side, if it has no part at all in this narrative, can I say to you today, I am so very sorry that that has what has been happening, that that's what's been going on, that that's the way that you have been feeling. I'm sorry for what you went through. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm sorry for any stuff that's getting reminders. I'm sorry for anything you felt that's guilty. You know, there are some people who've been through horrific abuse that they haven't shared about it with anybody other than maybe their spouse and Jesus and maybe their counselor. And you don't know why they won't go see this movie. But maybe you need to just stop asking them to see the movie and just realize maybe there's a reason and leave it go at that. Just some advice there. Not everything needs to be shared with everybody, and some things that you've been healed from, you just don't bring back up. I know a lot of this is not intentional, but it still needs to be acknowledged because you may have never simply thought about it this way before. The person who has been trafficked and abused matters so much to the Lord. And the Lord has a broken heart over that evil. And that evil is what cost him his very life on the cross. His love knows no bounds. And I think that this might sound ridiculous, but it's not, because it's how good our God is. If a social media scroll brings up something and a flood of memories engulf you and you just suddenly find yourself in a puddle, Jesus cares about that. He really does. He sees you. And I just want to encourage you that you're not wrong if you just can't participate in everybody's going to the Sound of Freedom movie. You need to see it more than once. You need to get on board with this. This can take you to a dark place, and I pray it doesn't. But if it has, Jesus is right there with you in that dark place, and I'm just so terribly sorry for all you've been through. You are not ignored or overlooked. Your God sees you, and he loves you so much. And again, I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. I am so sorry for what you've been through, for what happened to you, and for the stress that this narrative has possibly brought you. And lastly, can I just say that not seeing the Sound of Freedom movie does not mean that you are out of the fight against human trafficking. It doesn't mean you're not in this thing if you don't go see this movie. It also does not make you a bad Christian if you do not go see this film. It's okay not to see the movie, and it's okay to speak into the chatter around it with a voice that wants to share another side, another story, a perspective that could help somebody else to have more compassion and maybe to learn something they didn't know before. If that's you, thanks for watching this video. You're the ones I made it for. And also, I have to say this, the Lord simply would not stop reminding me about this. It has been about 2 straight weeks of this, and I have been just like, I don't want to get into this. Lord, I don't want to. And he just kept nudging me along, encouraging me, pushing me, reminding me. at the end of the day, I have to obey, right? As a follower of Christ. That's my job. That's my role. That's kind of my duty because I was bought with a price. My life is not my own. The price I was bought with is the precious blood of Christ. So when he's telling me to do something, even if I catch a lot of flack and I'm completely misunderstood, even if there will be consequences, even if there are going to be some who are going to want me to pay a price for daring to say something that doesn't fit the current popular opinion among most American Christians. Well, I guess as it says in the book of Acts, am I to obey God or men? So even if I get roasted, even if I get toasted, I guess that's okay because I have to do what God called me to do. And I guess my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner, that I fought him, not really fought him, but that I kind of was like, can you get somebody else to do it? Okay, I guess I'll do it. So that's my story. Thank you for listening. I hope that this encouraged or blessed or challenged or made sense to somebody. You don't have to go see this movie. You don't have to go see this movie. Alrighty. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.